Hello, hello, and welcome to another reading. We are here to talk about the next full moon in Virgo. So I just want to share my screen. Why is it not letting me share? There we go. Sorry about that. Um, we're sort of still in the Aquarian space. We've just passed Aquarian new moon, and I'm still feeling that Aquarian energy as we jump here to the 2 week from the new moon. Remember, we always have our big lunations. Our new moon and full moon are always 2 weeks apart. So we had new moon on the 10th of what is this month? You'd swear Mercury was retrograde. New moon on the 10th of February, and on the 24th of February, we're going to be having the full moon in Virgo. So I don't know. I've just been looking at this chart and I feel like we're going to be uncomfortable. We're going to be really, really uncomfortable. Virgo is a sign that rules our digestive system. And almost looking at the chart, I can already feel the sort of nauseating feelings of discomfort. And for me, the big place this comes from is the Aquarius planet. So let's talk about that for a moment. Let me just blow this up a little so we can see. So the moon is down here at 5 degrees of Virgo, reflecting the sun up at 5 degrees of Pisces. But you can see that most of the planets are really heavy on this side of the chart. We spoke about this, and we will speak about this again and again, because for the first part of this year, most of the planets are kind of congested in Capricorn, then Aquarius, then Pisces, then Aries, and then they're going to start to open out a little bit more, sort of, even in Taurus, they're going to congest and then they'll move out from Gemini. So it's kind of like heavy in one space. And as I said to you last time, it's very much in the last few signs of the zodiacal wheel, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and the first few signs, Aries, Taurus, where there is this progressive weightiness, heaviness, intensity. And so for me, that's a little bit of a continuation of a theme we've all been experiencing for quite a while. But it's kind of coming in pretty hard and fast. And the lessons right now is endings and beginnings. And then we have the moon in Virgo. Poor little Virgo moon is trying to order and organize all the other guys on the other side. And it's almost as if she is trying to hold on to the kite that is flying in that direction. So being in Virgo, she can see the Pisces planets really nice and easily because they're exactly opposite her. So she can see where the sun is. In fact, she is reflecting the fullness of his light. She can see Saturn. This is already a tug of war energy when there is an opposition. It's pretty intense. Sun and moon are on two sides of the same coin. So they have opposing ideas, but around similar concepts. So when we're talking about Virgo and Pisces as an axis, an archetypal axis, we're talking about Virgo. How do I really put the day-to-day effort and detail into practically creating and manifesting and doing the work? Very much that training up and being the mentee. And then Pisces is the mentor. Pisces is the sage, the mystic, the wise one. Pisces forgets about the small minor details and has Virgo, the apprentice, doing the work, while Pisces gets to like tap into expandedness. So you might see this as a wizard doing deep meditations and managing to access deep spaces, while the wizard's apprentice is sitting there making sure that all the little details are attended to, including that maybe the wizard remembers to eat and wash and do such normal things. So Pisces is sometimes a little bit out there, very deeply connected to everything really. And it's watery. So a lot of that connection and cohesion is coming through the element of water. And then Virgo is earth. So it's kind of like, let's make this real. Let's make this practical. Let's remember the mundane fact that you have a body, you need to tend to the needs of your body and pay your bills and feed your pets and get your children to school and those kinds of things. That's where that moon is. And she's trying desperately to do all those things while anchoring the tidal waviness that is Sun opposite here, and Saturn. And Saturn already, we've spoken into this many times as well. Saturn's already trying to wrangle the ocean, because Saturn is all about structure and stability, and there's not much structure and stability in the entire ocean. It's tidal, it's constantly shifting, the waves are big, then they're small, it's this tide, then it's that tide, it's deep, then it's shallow, it's murky, then it's clear. You know, it's different oceans with different currents, with different temperatures. There's nothing consistent and structured about the energy of the ocean, and that is just its way. It's neither good nor bad. But when you bring in, and so Neptune loves that energy. Neptune is also in Pisces, but Neptune's really happy here. Neptune's the modern ruler of the sign. And Neptune's like, yeah, this is how I like to roll. I like to roll in the who knows what's coming. And I have the urge to make a big wave, or I have the urge to float along. That's Neptune's jam. So Neptune's fine here, but Saturn is like, how do I consolidate this? Almost like he wants to freeze the whole ocean into an ice block so he can just go, okay, now what am I feeling? What am I sensing? Just keep this still for a minute so I can get my footing. So Saturn is, and he's going to be here for a while. Saturn spends 2.5 years in a sign. He's only at 9 degrees. We've got a ways to go yet. So this kind of uncomfortable Saturny space, we're kind of starting to get used to it. We're almost through the first third, or the first decan of that sign. So we're starting to get a little bit more used to this uncertain footing, which is again quite a gift in the beginnings and the endings and beginnings, because oftentimes first something needs to crumble beneath us, and then we need to find new, surer footing, because what once worked no longer does. That's a humongous collective theme for us. So here the moon is desperately trying to anchor, fly the kite that is this tidal wave going here. Maybe we can think of her as the anchor to the ocean, in the little boat in the ocean of the Pisces planets. But here's where it gets really icky and uncomfortable, is that in astrology, if we're talking about Ptolemaic aspects, the more common aspects that we've heard of, the opposition, the square, the trine, the sextile, or the conjunction when they're together, those are the ones where the planet can see another planet, can access another planet with consciousness. They're not always easy, but when we can see a problem, we can start to work with the problem. When we can understand what we're working with, we can do something about it. We have these other areas where they would be invisible to that planet. And we would call these, depending on where you're looking, like a non-aspect, okay, or a quincunx. So for the moon in Pisces, the planets that are in Aquarius, especially the early degrees of Aquarius, and the planets that are in Aries, especially the earlier degrees of Aries, so we don't have anything in the very early degrees, these are invisible to the moon. She cannot see them. So if we think of all that we've been churning and swirling around with Aquarius, and we imagine Aquarius as the astronomer or astrologer even, with that telescope, looking out, dreaming big, expanding outside of the boundaries by like far into the solar system and beyond. And here we have this dedicated Virgo moon. Remember, the moon is about nurturance, nourishment, the actual body. She is the closest body to the earth, astral body to the earth. So she's wanting to like, let me nourish the human form. Let me nourish the needs of this person to live their day-to-day life. While all those Aquarius planets, particularly Pluto at 1 degree at this point, don't worry about this VX too much, but then even Mars and Venus, who have just had a conjunction the day before this new moon, which means Venus caught up with Mars, and by the time of the new moon, she's just gone past him. She travels quite a bit faster than Mars, so they don't meet up in the sky that often. It's not even an annual event, but it is within 2 years, 18 months-ish, she's going to meet up with Mars. So she hasn't done this in a while. She's just begun a new cycle with Mars in, I think it was at 7 degrees actually, of Aquarius, which is very, very closely quincunx, 150 degrees from the full moon point. And they're all in this invisible blind spot to both the sun, actually, and the moon. But I just want to speak about it from the moon's perspective at this moment, is that here she is. her tummy is churning because she's thinking, I need to do this and I need to make sure that, and have I fed this one, and did I cook enough food for this, and did the laundry get done? And think of her like, or like that apprentice energy of having to make sure that the workshop is clean and everybody is fed and cared for and all the needs are tended to. And she just knows there's something that's not working, or as if she's being watched or judged, or I've always done it this way and I don't know why, but it feels like the other shoe's going to drop. It's uncomfortable. It's this invisible, expanding outward, new paradigm kind of energy of Pluto, who's changing the status quo on many, many levels with this power dynamic, and Mars and Venus, the yin and the yang, the masculine, feminine archetypes. So very much changing relational dynamics and even our own yin and yang. So where am I a doer and I don't know how to rest? And where do I get stuck and I don't know how to do? Where the balance is a little bit out, because those two are in Aquarius trying to find this kind of connection point, trying to recalibrate. And the moon can feel it, but she can't see it to do something about it, which for a Virgo energy is the worst. Virgo is going to say, give me a pile of stuff and I will clean it, fold it, wash it, sort it. Then I know what to do. Let me write my checklist and tick things off as I get them done. But when I can't see what I'm working with, I'm uncomfortable. And there is a constant anxious churning in my gut that tells me I'm missing something important. And that is very much how the moon is feeling for this. So it's less intense, that conversation, that perspective of the moon with this sort of invisible space, than this invisible space. And I just want to remind you, the exact houses that you see these planets in, that's done for where I live. So it might not be, this is irritating me, sorry. So it most likely is not the same for you, depending where in the world you live. You'd have to check that out. But so what I'm saying is this 8 degrees would be quite tight on the MC, but that's quite likely not where it is in your part of the world. However, we can see here that Chiron and the North Node, and this I've also been talking about for a while, the North Node is moving backwards. So he's moving towards Chiron at 16, and Chiron is moving forward right now. So he's moving towards 17. So this has been getting progressively, I think I've mentioned it last one and maybe even the one before, that these guys were just getting closer. It's quite a powerful thing for us. And what's happening is they're almost meeting at the point of this full moon. And by the next new moon, the Pisces new moon, they will actually they'll be even closer. They'll both be within 17 degrees, but they will have crossed each other. So they'll be on opposite sides and they'll be beginning to separate. So this full moon is the last point at which the building energy of their connection. And then by the time we have that next new moon, we're like, okay, I get what that lesson was now. That was a bit let me start to move away from it, process it, digest it, and move away from it. And the reason I think it will be a little bit of an ouch spot, is because Chiron is literally our wound. Because it is in Aries, it's talking about where do I feel like I am fighting for my independence, not being able to be independent, not being heard, not being appreciated as an individual. Where am I being squashed as an individual? Where am I being domineering as an individual? Something to do with Aries is that individual self and that individuating self, ideally. So you want to find, where is that not working? And then the North Node is a dharmic point. It's a space that we are evolving towards, that our soul wants to grow and understand. So if our evolution requires us to go deep into a wounding around where we do not feel a strong sense of self, or where we have been wounded in our sense of self, that's not comfortable. Add to the fact that the moon by sign, if not by degree point, is in that uncomfortable conversation with that area of the chart, that archetype anyway. It might not be the same area, but that same archetype of Aries. That's, again, it's like moon is just trying to do what she needs to do. I'm trying to fix things. I'm trying to create a panacea for everything. And here, this horrible wound is being aggravated, and I can't see it to fix it. So you can see why it's like an uncomfortable. You might just want to take to your bed for a couple of days. You might want to wrap yourself up like a cocoon and just hide away from the world and go, okay, I've got all these uncomfortable feelings going on. I do not understand them. I cannot see. Remember, there's a lot of cannot see in this chart. I cannot see where they're coming from, but I'm just going to have to be and roll with it. Maybe moon in Virgo, maybe I cannot be as organized and steady and predictable and hardworking as I would like, but I have to get through these few days. So it's going to be an interesting ride, which I don't think is going to be super comfortable. Certainly for me, looking at this chart, it looks uncomfortable. I don't usually talk about Black Moon Lilith. She is a point rather than a planet. And basically, she's kind of the energy of the dark side of the moon, or the energy of Lilith, Adam's first wife, who became a shamanic shapeshifter, who refused to back down to the patriarchy, ostensibly. So she's quite a fierce feminine archetype. And she is actually at 16 degrees of Virgo, so very closely quincunx to 16 degrees of Aries, Chiron. So again, that wound for the feminine, that may very well be for you as a woman, if you're a woman, or just the feminine within each of us, because obviously we have both. There may well be a bit of an uncomfortable angstiness around that. So let's say you've always felt you can't stand up for yourself in the workplace as a woman, because those are all the sort of archetypal and inherited patterning that comes with that. Or even as a man, maybe you're just that man who doesn't go in there all manly and aggressive and push your way forward. If you're not that man, this may be an opportunity now where you really feel like, effort, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going in and I'm gonna say that thing. I'm just gonna say that thing. And if they want to fire me, they can fire me. It might be something around that, where that fierce feminine comes in and goes, I don't back down. I don't back down. And even maybe a feeling of wanting to wound. So the Lilith energy may want to wound people who have dominated and had power over you. So again, obviously, wanting to wound is potentially going to open you up to more wounding, being wounded back. You go on the attack, somebody attacks back. It's obviously not a place you really want to encourage yourself into, but those are quite probably the sort of feelings that will be coming up. The other thing that we cannot avoid talking about is the strong square here between Jupiter at 10 degrees of Taurus, fixed Earth, to both Mars and Venus at 8 and 9 degrees of fixed air, Aquarius. So Jupiter is going to expand a lot of that relational dynamic, Venus and Mars, the new paradigm of what that looks like versus a more grounded, practical response from Jupiter. Like, well, how could we do it that way? That doesn't make sense. Let's go back to what we know works, and let's enjoy the sensory world around our relationships, where there is almost more of a disembodied feeling from Mars and Venus saying, we have to understand a new way, almost without the senses, without the touch, and then come back to the actual connection of touch. It's interesting because Aquarius is a air sign, so it's all about connection. But the connection is kind of more mental with Aquarius, and maybe on some levels with all the air signs, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. It's about connection with people. It's about communication, but it's often not about touch connection, actual physicality. That we would look more at like passionate fire or practical hands on earth. Air can kind of disassociate a little bit more easily. That's not always because air doesn't feel or doesn't care. It's just that there's this deep need to first come up and look down like an eagle, see what the lay of the land is, and try and figure out a better way forward, and then land and say, right, this is where we're building the nest. This is where we're we're starting a family, whatever the case may be. So it's kind of going to be a little uncomfortable in these two places now, because Mars and Venus are going to want some space to lift on up. I also just want to point out Mercury has just moved into Pisces, which is a place where Mercury doesn't think very clearly. He's not at his best. So that also might mean, because Mercury is the ruler of this moon. So here the moon is trying to be very detail oriented, trying to be very organized, but her ruling planet has just stepped into the ocean. And so he's swimming under the ocean with his mask and goggles, and he's trying to see what Saturn's saying, like, where do we this and how can we structure that? And he can't see clearly the way that he could maybe in the air out of the ocean. And so he's busy a little bit, he's a little underwater, and which makes it also harder for the moon to kind of keep her focus, because her ruling planet is currently coming up to the sun in Pisces as well. Of course, Uranus is very present in the sky at the moment. These two are building to a connection in the not too distant future, which will be fireworks and expansion. But for this particular new moon, he's not too intense, so we'll leave him for now. I think that is all I want to speak into for this particular moon, so it's a little bit more concise. And I hope you have a beautiful lunation. I will be back to share the next new moon with you in a few weeks. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like, share, follow, subscribe, etc. And please check the links below for anything you would like to expand into working with me privately if you feel called. Thank you so much for your time.